G'day and welcome to the Paul Wallis Channel. In these short stories of origins, I'm going to tell some short stories of anomalies in the news today, strange phenomena in the present day, and asking if there's any connection between those and what our ancestors had to tell us in world mythology and ancestral narratives around the world. Is there any connection between the things we experience today and what our ancestors were speaking about? And I'd like to hear from you, so I'm going to end with a question so that you can jump into the comments and you and I can get into a conversation. And please remember to subscribe and click on the bell for all notifications. I learned about earthing from my wife, and it happened because a few years ago I started suffering from sleep apnea. I didn't know that's what it was. I just knew that every so often through the night I would wake up coughing and spluttering and gasping for breath. Well, eventually I did have a sleep study, which is where they put electrodes all over your body and they measure how long you're asleep for, what kind of sleep it is, how much you're moving, so on and so forth. And they discovered, yes, it was sleep apnea. Yes, every 2 minutes I would stop breathing for about 37 seconds at a time. And they recommended a CPAP machine to keep my airways open during the night. Well, you may know what a CPAP machine is. It's quite a confronting piece of equipment. It makes a terrible sound for the person trying to sleep next to you. It looks rather like a life support system, and my wife Ruth wasn't a huge fan of it, and I was struggling to get used to it. So I tried it for a little while, and then I had some pressured situations at work, and I thought, no, I really need even my bad night's sleep to happen. I can't be experimenting with this at the same time, so I'll come back to it later. So I did. A few months later, think, okay, I've got to get back to that CPAP machine, see if I can make it work. Well, at that point, Ruth said, Paul, would you try something else? Before we spend $1,000 on a CPAP machine, would you try an earthing mat? Now, I'd heard a little bit about earthing. I'd heard a little bit about the work of Jack Kruse, and I'd heard that people do find a benefit from earthing themselves. They find health benefits. And earthing essentially means that you connect your body's electromagnetic field with the electromagnetic field of planet Earth. That instead of living in insulated cars and insulated buildings and walking in rubber-soled shoes, you stand barefoot on the ground, you walk barefoot, you connect with nature so that you do exactly what you do when you earth an electrical appliance. You regularize your electromagnetic field. So that was the theory. I had zero expectation it would have any impact on my sleep apnea, but because it was Ruth who asked me, I said, okay, I'll give it a go. So we got an earthing mat, which essentially, it's the equivalent of sleeping on the ground. It earths you while you're in your bed. Well, to my total astonishment, from the very first night I slept on that earthing mat, zero snoring, zero coughing and spluttering, zero waking up gasping for breath from the very first night. And the change of it was really brought home to me on one occasion when we got up at the crack of dawn, 5 in the morning, to get ready for a market. And then we drove a couple of hours to the market for Ruth to sell her AfroShe, which is natural treatments for hair and skin. Took ages to get there, ages to set the market up, and then we were at the market all day, and then we packed up. So by the time we got to our local hotel, about 4:30 in the afternoon, we were plumb tuckered out. And so I unpacked the car, went into the hotel room, flopped down onto the bed and was asleep within 2 minutes. A few minutes later, I woke up coughing and spluttering and gasping for breath because it hadn't occurred to me I hadn't put the earthing mat there. So that was the thing that showed me personally that earthing was working for me. And I then had to work my way backwards to to think, well, how is this working? Why is this working? And this is what I came up with. Sleep apnea is a communication loop that's broken down. The communication loop between the back of your throat and your brain. When you get older, the back of your throat gets a bit looser, hangs a bit lower, and it can obstruct the airways. Now, when that happens, a signal should go from the back of your throat to your brain saying, lift the throat, and the brain lifts the throat. As long as that communication circle is working, you've got no sleep apnea. But sleep apnea is where the back of the throat doesn't get the signal to the brain. The loop has gone like that. And in fact, instead of the normal loop, what now happens is an emergency signal comes from somewhere else saying, he's not breathing, wake him up. And so you've got this. Earthing had repaired this communication loop. And so I had to conclude that this communication loop that my body uses is connected with a healthy electromagnetic field. Now, earthing is partly about uniting your body's electromagnetic field with the Earth's electromagnetic field, which I'll call an EMF as it's a bit of a mouthful. Harmonizing the two EMFs seems to be good for your health. There's another aspect to it too, and that is that the sun has a positive charge. The Earth has a negative charge, and that means that there is a flow of electrical energy from the sun to the Earth. And if we can make ourselves part of that communication, again, standing barefoot on the soil is quite enough to do that. And so I've been trying to form the habit of walking barefoot rather than in boots all the time. And in Australia, I'm in a good country to do that. Our bodies are not isolated, self-contained entities. We have an EMF. The planet has an EMF. The sun has an EMF. And earthing and grounding is about being part of that electrical mix in a way that is helpful rather than harmful. Now, did our ancestors have anything to say about earthing that would give another framework for this? Absolutely. I live in Australia, and if I spend time with my Aboriginal Australian friends and listen to the wisdom of a culture that's been on this continent for more than 60,000 years, I will hear about the benefits of going barefoot. Every so often, an adult male traditionally would go walkabout. And this doesn't just mean go off and have a wander. It means you are barefoot in the bush, tuning into nature, exposing yourself to sunlight, and it's done as a recalibration, a reset, an aid in regathering your equilibrium. And I find that a very helpful framework indeed. And I now realize that times when I've done a lot of sunning and earthing are times in my life when my body has known a lot of healing. And so I take a lead from my Aboriginal brothers and sisters, and I do, on a smaller scale, go walkabout from time to time, sunning, earthing, barefoot. But I want to hear from you. What's your experience of earthing? Do you practice it? If so, where did you learn it? If so, what benefits have you gained from it? Or do you just think it's a load of hokum? Whichever your view, whatever your experience, jump into the comments. I would love to get into conversation with you and compare notes on the topic. And while I'm with you today, a quick shout out to my book, The Scars of Eden. If you've not got your copy yet, you can go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, wherever books are sold. And again, in the comments here, I would love to compare notes with you and get into conversation. Thanks so much for watching the Paul Wallis Channel today. Remember to subscribe, click on the bell for notifications, and I'll see you in the comments.